I said you're gonna watch this tape, and you're gonna do what I say, or I'm gonna do something to you.
And I don't know what that is, because everybody has always done what I say.
Listen.
So what's good, y'all? This is Toonrific Tariq, and I kind of wanted to do something like this for a while. I just always kind of felt like there were a lot of different black people in the industry and everything like that created the stuff that we grew up on and the stuff that we admire that we just didn't know. Like all these names that we see in the credits, they just roll by and then we just kind of move on and don't really think about it twice. And I don't really think that's fair, because the ones in the forefront, the ones with their names under the show logos, like that isn't who we should only know about, you know? So that's what this is. That's what this new kind of series thing that I want to do is. It's a way to highlight a lot of people that probably would go unnoticed otherwise. Give you somebody's career to tap into, somebody whose work might inspire you, you never know. But you know, just to let you know, like this isn't gonna be like the normal kinda affair, crazy editing and TikToks and reactions all over the place and shit like that. I don't think I'm gonna have a little hip-hop hairy white girl on the screen. I'm not gonna have Kanye up there. But I do feel like this is important, and you know, this might not be everybody's speed. People might find this kind of stuff boring, but if you really care about animation, I don't know, you might find a couple gems. So today we're talking to animation legend Dan Haskett, who, like, just to list off a couple of the things that we talk about in the video, did a lot of character designs on Tiny Toon Adventures, designed Moe and Barney and some of Bart's friends on The Simpsons. Dan also had a part in the 80s and 90s incarnation of Alvin and the Chipmunks, particularly the 80s. I know he worked on the Ruby Spears one, and he also worked on the Chipmunk Adventure. But all the Chipmunk stuff isn't in this video. I actually kind of want to do a video on the Chipmunk Adventure sometime soon, so I'm just gonna save all of that stuff for then. But you get the rest. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I feel like Moe Szyslak, one of the most beloved characters on the most beloved animated show of all time, was designed by a black man, and not that many people know. So, without further ado, kick back, relax, throw this on TV, get to drawing, like, do whatever you gotta do. But I think y'all might like this. This is All About You, featuring Dan Haskett. I don't even, like, know how to close this shit out. Like, how do y'all even do this shit? Like, I feel like I'm talking to nobody.
It's all about
Real quick, today's video is actually brought to you by the service Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of different classes covering dozens of different creative topics, all taught by well-versed professionals. Have a specific skill that you're trying to learn? Well, Skillshare is the perfect place to start. From photography to illustration to graphic design, freelancing, and more, you can find classes that will match your goals and interests. I know I have a lot of new things that I want to try out, and Skillshare helps me do that. If you're into animation, I def recommend Jake Bartlett's Animation Principles. Add playful personality to your animations. To add playful personality to your animations. Yeah, I guess it's pretty straightforward.
We're a little short. Hell,
Don't worry, gang, I got you. The first 1,000 people to use the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can explore your creativity while having to put the bag up. Might as well get in your big brain shit. As always, just go to the link in the description for a 1-month free trial. All you gotta do is go down to the link in the description for a 1-month free trial of Skillshare.
My name is Dan Haskett. I'm a 50-plus year veteran of animation and cartooning. I've worked just about every place that's been around in those last 50 years. Both in New York, in California, in Toronto, briefly in London. And so it's been quite a ride so far.
So how did you, starting all the way back, how did you get into animation, and what was the industry like back then? And like, how did you get into it?
Okay, that was kind of weirdly easy back then
Yeah.
because this was 1969. And I had just graduated from high school. It was a very special high school in New York called the High School of Art and Design, which is what used to be called a trade school. In other words, you majored in a specific thing that you wanted to do for a living, and you got enough education in that trade to go out and get a job upon graduation. And for me, I was a cartooning and animation major. Fortunately, I won an award just before graduation on the animation side of things. That was from the Animators Union. And part of the award was a list of studios that I could call and find out if they had work. And so that's what I did. I just I sat down and made cold calls. And happily for me, I didn't get past B before I got hired. That's how I got started.
Wow. I don't know what I expected the answer to be, but that is very straightforward.
Yeah, I know it's very different from the way things are done now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the way it was at the time because the business was quite different as well. In New York, everything was commercials, really. And New York was actually losing business to Hollywood and elsewhere. Looking back on it, I think that, I was very lucky. I was very fortunate.
Right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear more?
Oh, may we?
Just kind of looking at the like you said when you introduced yourself, you've just kind of been all over everywhere, and that includes just kind of being around when things really started to change in terms of like the perception, I guess, the animation and stuff like that, the kind of things that are being produced. If you don't mind just like talking a little bit about that, just about like, like the late 80s and like the pretty much the entirety of the 90s, because you were on like Tiny Toons and Simpsons, two shows that kind of just like changed everything. And like you were there for like the infancy stages, which I think is really cool too. What was that like experiencing just like that shift and working on those shows?
Okay, let me think about that for a second. What was interesting for me, one thing that was interesting for me was that the whole idea of reviving the Warner Brothers characters, because things were changing in broadcast at that time, so that the kind of humor that Warner Brothers cartoons were famous for was falling out of favor, because some people were saying it was too violent. There were many references that there's a lot of ethnic humor and things that were no longer being seen as hilarious. And so it was a thing of, okay, we want to bring these characters back because we own these things, but how do we do it? The earliest memory that I have of Tiny Toons was actually meeting a Warner executive in New York. And I don't know if this was his idea or if he was just telling me about the proposed project. But this is the guy's name was Steve Green. And he was telling me about a project they had in mind in doing kid versions of Bugs and Daffy and Porky and the rest. And it was called Tiny Toons, Tunes, as in Looney Tunes. Now, I remember doing some drawings of some of the characters as kids. Did a Porky and Sylvester, and let's see, they had a female counterpart to Sylvester that I recall as well. And so, they were they were still figuring out how they were going to do this and all, what direction things would take. And a couple of years after that, I ended up back in Hollywood working on the final version of it, which had been influenced by Steven Spielberg. I'm not altogether sure whether it was his idea to create a new bunch of characters that echoed the older ones, or what. But I think that, that may have been his concept, to put them in this Looniversity to learn how to do comedy the old-fashioned way. The other side of the coin, the other thing that I recall that I thought was interesting, was how many people were on the project who had come from Hanna-Barbera and places like that, who were looking to do something that had a lot more energy. That they relished the idea of taking on these old characters because it might give them a chance to really really animate these things, really bring these things to life fully. Right. So there was a force behind it that gave it some strength, And that's what I remember most of all about the bare beginnings of it.
You remember anything from just on the adult animated side of things? Your time on Simpsons?
Yeah, the Simpsons, as you know, was an offshoot of the Tracy Ullman Show, which was a sketch comedy show, and the Simpsons were 1 minute blackouts. That's what used to call them from vaudeville and whatnot, blackout gags. Okay, as far as the transition, I had a hand in that because they wanted to soften the looks of the characters. And I had been a character designer for a few years before joining the show. And they wanted me to help them pull the characters into a little easier to digest appearance. Right. Because as I understand it, some people were referring to them as the Monster Family.
Really?
And so, yeah. And so since they didn't want to keep that nickname for obvious reasons, part of my job was to help redesign some of the characters and create new ones in a more, as I said, in a softened style. And so I ended up designing characters like Mo the bartender and Barney and some of Bart's schoolmates, and so incidental characters and things like that. And I also did model sheets for the animators.
I think I read that you drew Bart's teacher too. Is that true? No. Incorrect. You didn't list it, so I was like, let me ask real quick to make sure what I read was wrong. Your favorite animated project, whether you worked on it or not. If you have something that you love that you wish you had a part in, that would be cool too.
Oh, yeah, I don't really have favorites per se because all of them I have to find something to like about them. So I don't know if there's one that I like more all that much. I tell you the truth, I don't know if I think that project is in the future. Let's put it this way. I had a very different approach to what I wanted to see in animation than I found that a lot of people had. And I haven't seen anything quite get there yet. I mean, there are things that I can see the glimmer of something that I wish had been able to have been pushed more. There are things like Hunchback of Notre Dame, Atlantis. Because here's where part of where I'm coming from with my evasive answer here. When I started out in the early 70s, Fritz the Cat was being made. I don't know if you've heard of that. Yeah. Okay, then you know what that's about.
Right.
And that and a few other projects, including one that I did work on, which was a Raggedy Ann and Andy, looked like they were finally starting to tilt animation, or at least feature animation, away from Disney. And just however tentative the steps were, or however off the rails the stuff went, like Fritz and other Ralph Bakshi things. And it seemed like this could be a very interesting time because people were actually, as few as there were, people were actually selling these things to studios. You're like, oh, okay, something just may finally click here,
No doubt. So I guess is it more like the mature side of things and just kind of implementing Is it more along those lines? Is what you're kind of going for?
Yeah, I would. I always wanted to see animated drama. Just a straight up drama. There were so many kinds of things that I had either never seen or had only seen like little experiments. I remember there was a CGI thing when CGI was still relatively new. I remember seeing I think it was a student film that was a surreal horror film, and that got me. I thought that, this is interesting. And especially since there were no, as I recall, there were no human characters in it. They were symbolic things, objects. Oh my, this is, and this works. And that for me, I think that's still pretty much where things are. I'd like to see more experimentation, and maybe now is the time for it, perhaps because the last couple of years there's been so much product that's had to be made that maybe there's a little wiggle room for some other things that are more off the beaten path,
Especially too, since there's been a lot of just kind of people taking projects into like their own hands. There's so many like resources. I have a tablet like right in front of me where like, if this was 20 years ago, it would have taken me forever to get something like this. But you know what I mean? Like things are changing so fast that like, I could see it. I could see it tilting in that direction very soon. So like you said, you've done a lot of character design. How do you feel about the difference in specializing in character design opposed to animation? Because I noticed you do like a lot of character design, whether it be on like all the Scooby stuff at Warner or so how do you feel about just that in general, just the difference between character design and animator?
Well, I miss animating very much, and I got into character design for survival because the great bulk of American animation was being sent overseas. So I had to do something, and I had just gotten married, and I had to do something. So I started shifting gears and got into character design and storyboard. I miss performing. I miss animating because I miss the idea of bringing a character fully to life as an emotionally real or emotionally believable thing. And so character design, of course, is part of that, certainly.
Right.
But I miss the performing.
This is one of those things that I read online, so I could be wrong. But did you have something to do with the Space Jam that just happened last year?
Yeah.
Right.
I started on that as a character designer, but eventually moved to animation.
That must have felt good, right? To do it then. Especially since that movie went to theaters too. It went theatrical, which is just rare for 2D these days. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, that was interesting seeing the combination of the two. And I didn't see. Did I see that? Yes, I did see it in the theater. But I never found out what people actually thought of it. Could you tell me?
It's pretty split. I really liked it, and that's not me just saying that because I'm talking to you. I really had a great time with it.
Well, I don't own it, so
Yeah, right.
Say whatever you want.
No, I had a great time with it. I kind of went into it wanting it to be dumb, silly fun, and that's exactly what I got. So I felt like I was fine. A lot of my friends that a little older than me that grew up with because I grew up with the original too, but a lot of them were older than me when it came out. And they all some of them kind of just think it's okay. Some of them think that it's like a huge step down. It does vary, but that's just gonna happen when you have something like that that's so important to so many people. It's still the first one is still the highest grossing basketball movie ever, which is still crazy to me. But the impact is real. The impact is real.
The first one had such a following that, and it took what? That was 96. So what did it take? Like 20 some odd years to get to the new one.
Right.
And so I did wonder what all of those ex-children who grew up, who saw the first one when they were, young and impressionable,
right,
would think of this. So
yeah,
interesting.
It's pretty split.
It's an easy task. Authority should be derived from the consent of the governed, not
Right,
from
yeah,
threat of force.
what the fuck?
So, what kind of non-animated media do you feel as though helps you be not only a better artist but like a better animator? I know sometimes people say that animators are actors and that kind of thing. Is there anything in particular that you like look to sometimes for inspiration that's not animated?
Oh, well, I love show business, so I always look to movies and theater for inspiration. I also look to modern art for inspiration. I look to all kinds of things because I'll get inspiration from various kinds of music, from painting, from books, from illustration, it's quite a few. Now that I'm thinking about it, I get information from across the board from a lot of different things. And one thing that I have to say that I miss very much about living in New York City was constant inspiration from just being on the streets. You saw, I say this a lot, that you saw all kinds of little comedies and dramas going on all the time around you in real life. And that's something that I always felt that people who had only lived or only worked, I should say, in Hollywood were missing out on. Because they were bringing in what they saw, what they knew, but just the amount of of things that you saw on a daily basis it couldn't help but be inspirational.
It's a very real world answer. Because I see that all the time. When I would go to New York, because I grew up in Jersey, just 20 minutes out of New York. So when I would go, it would be the same thing. The train, that kind of thing. You could never leave the house without seeing something interesting.
As soon as you get on the train, or even before you get on the train,
right,
you're still on the platform or whatever. It starts. Oh yeah.
What would you say is like your biggest both personal failure and success in your career?
Wow. As far as failures go, I think there are so many things that I've worked on that I did just because I needed the money. That I can't say I'm proud of them. Are they failures? Yes and no, because they are not good movies, or they're not good shows. But I learned from them. And I'm able to teach from them. I've done a little bit of teaching in colleges and high schools, doing lectures. And I had, I did a few at NYU, where the teacher there was glad to have me there because I told them I didn't lie to the kids. I didn't sugarcoat a lot of the things I was telling them about the industry. And he was grateful for that. And I'm glad he was, because telling people about your failures is as important as telling them about your successes. And oh boy, I've worked on some things that it's just horrific. That's what I thought of them at the time. But you know something? Since the internet, what is so funny for me is that things that I just, was thinking like, oh my God, what have I done with my life, right? Somebody likes them.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked on one thing in particular that was a Pinocchio thing. That was Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, which is something that I thought would scare the hell out of kids in spots, which it did. And I thought, oh my God, what kid is going to go for this? Guess what? Decades later. Yeah, on YouTube, I'm saying, oh yeah, boy, I like this. There may be like one person maybe, but I love this movie. This was great. And that taught me a lesson too. Is you're like, you really have no idea what somebody's gonna go for.
Right.
And so something that you think is junk, someday somebody will go, oh, that I enjoyed that so much, and I learned this and that and the other from this. Thought, okay, wow.
Yeah.
I may still think it's junk, but nevertheless.
How does it feel seeing that now that like you can see all of that kind of stuff and hear all of? I could just imagine, because now I just kind of do this YouTube thing. I put stuff out and then I get an instant reaction, but like you guys just kind of like made. And then hope people like it, and then if you saw somebody in the street, say that they liked it. You saw somebody in the street. How does it feel like just looking at this transition now to how things are?
Oh my goodness, it's wonderful in a way. I mean, it depends. I think it depends on your temperament, because if you get a lot of bad news on the internet, that can drive you crazy if you let it. But here's the thing I'm getting at. I think this was Friz Freleng. You know who he was, right? Yeah. I think he was the one that said this, that what he missed so much when he went into television was that you no longer had audience, you no longer knew the audience's response. You were no longer sitting with them, hearing and seeing how they were reacting to what you did. And I said, yeah, that's a big deal. And it's something that if you've worked up until now, if you worked overwhelmingly in television, which most people did, you had no idea how things were. You had no idea what people liked. You could not, you really couldn't judge. I think looking back on it, maybe the only thing, I don't know, that you had to go by was the show selling toys.
They would buy them then.
Yeah, I mean, if they like, if they like it, that's how they show that they like it, is buying toys.
Right.
And I hadn't thought of this before, so thank you for bringing this up. But that was there was no real yardstick that I can think of, because I don't know if with children's television, if anybody really paid all that much attention to ratings ever. I don't think it was the big deal that it was in with prime time. I think it was just more of a thing of I worked especially in the 80s and 90s, where there was so many toy based shows. That was the whole thing, was that you were really selling toys. And I mean, one thing that for me, in working on some of that stuff, especially in storyboarding and whatnot, and character layout, was that you would get stuff where every character in the toy line, ideally they wanted to have them all on screen at the same time.
Oh man. That is a lesson I learned. That is a lesson I learned.
And of course, never mind what it does to anything, to any kind of drama, or any kind of it. It murders storytelling.
Yeah.
But fortunately, things have changed a little bit. In fact, if anything, it's gone in the other extreme, where you're asked to do things that are cinematic. And I wonder about that now too, because it seems to be cutting off, for my my taste and my opinion, I'm wondering if it's cutting off some of the things that are special to animation that make it powerful. I don't know.
Mean?
Okay, that's the best way to put this. There are things that are peculiar to doing graphic art that are very powerful. And in trying so hard to make something realistic, or trying to make it more and more and more like live action, even though we are doing more and more hybrid things now, I'm wondering if something important gets lost along the way, because this can be a very powerful medium all on its own. And I do wonder sometimes if the push towards making it more live action-y dilutes it somewhat. I don't know. It's just pure, speculation and personal taste. But anyway, that's how I've been feeling about it, because I miss what a drawing or a painting. I miss the emotional effect that has on people. I don't know if I can put it in words any more explanatory than that. I don't know if I can go any deeper than that. But
I do believe that I know what you mean. It's kind of just like the soul that comes from it coming from someone's hand. Like the actual human touch on it.
Yes,
is really what that's what always, when I was a kid, that's what always stood out to me, is the big divide, the big difference when I saw these movies in theaters, was just that, like, when I started to get older and I started to look at the names in the credits, you can tell who drew what if you really know their style. If you have these books and you look at these sketches, you can really tell who's who. And that's not to say that you can't in CG, because some people definitely have their tells and the way that they do their character animation and the way that the characters move around and stuff. You can tell, but I think I do know what you mean. I think there is something that isn't there, that is, I guess, slowly on its way to be put back, just because now everything's kind of hybrid and everybody's trying out new styles and things like that. But I think I do understand.
We'll see what happens, because this was what was interesting to me. One of the things about Spider-Verse was this potpourri of styles, and just the idea of throwing all these styles into one movie was interesting. And I don't know if there's do you know, are they doing that sequel to it?
Yeah.
What? Okay.
Yeah, it's next year. It should come out. Yeah. Okay.
But that was an interesting experiment to me. Just to see how an audience responds to that. And I'd be curious to see what happens if you do it without the hook of an established character. What kind of things, it's I hope that this kind of ushers in a new period of experimenting.
So my last question is, how do you feel about, we actually kind of touched on this, but I guess just some closing thoughts. How do you feel about the current state of animation and feature and television? You feel like it's gotten, since you've gotten into the industry, or is it just kind of some kind of mix?
It's a mix, because I hope that more things that kind of, like I said, that kind of veer off into new directions will become popular. I'm hoping that, I think, I did say this before, I'm sorry, but I think it's important that the sheer amount of stuff that is needed to fill streaming will open things up a little bit, because that, plus the fact that we have a whole new generation of people coming into the field who I think have new ways of seeing things that will also open it up. I mean, when I was in my 20s, there was a program on public broadcasting that was called it was an animation showcase. Okay, and unfortunately I can't remember the name right now, but it was from around the world, shorts from around the world, and that was a very hopeful show for me to see. It was the first time I had really had a chance to see a range of material. That, and also there was a show actually on ABC television called Curiosity Shop. And at the time, this is when Chuck Jones was in charge of children's television at ABC for a couple of years. And this was during his tenure, his reign there, where he also, he got a hold of these acquisitions, of all of this stuff from Canada, from the National Film Board of Canada and elsewhere, Zagreb, Yugoslavia, and so forth. I was like, oh man, this is stuff that ordinarily, if it hadn't been somebody like Chuck Jones, you would not have seen this stuff on standard network TV, period. Maybe on public TV, but this was like the first and last exposure that a lot of American kids had to stuff from around the world.
Yeah.
And so, I'm hoping that something like that happens again. We're definitely seeing that, on the internet. You can see stuff from all over the planet, but I'm wondering how much of the thought behind it makes its way into American stuff. Both commercial American stuff and independent. Honestly, I haven't seen a lot of independent American stuff lately, so I really can't say. But man, I would love to see experiments on the scale of, say, what Disney was doing in the 1930s. Because, like they said, the first 5 Disney features, when you look back on it now, it was just the fact that those things got made at all.
Yeah, right.
Was a miracle. Especially something like Fantasia.
Yeah.
It's like, my God, who in his right mind at that time would have said, yes, let's pair classical music and animation and do abstract.
Yeah.
Let's do abstract. Let's do the creation of the world.
Right. Yeah.
When you look back on it now, it's like this man was insane. To do it at that time. If you were to bring an idea, I dare say if you were to bring an idea to a lot of studios today, they'd think you were crazy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So and what are we talking? 80 years now plus, and you would still be considered a nut. It's also important, speaking as a character designer, to come up with some stuff that people can really relate to emotionally. Not just stuff that's just funny looking or cool looking or whatever, but something else. I mean, I grew up with so many different styles in magazine and newspaper comics and advertising and in posters from Europe and from around the globe, and so I saw so many styles that to this day have never been animated and could be so much fun to do. I guess I would just love to see people start branching out. People tend to coagulate, they tend to clump around a few looks at a time. It's like we were saying before about The Simpsons. The success of The Simpsons was so immediate and so large. It murdered everything in prime time that came after it. There was no room. Everybody wanted to, everybody wanted Simpsons.
Right.
And so you never even got to find out if something else would work. And that's still true. The Bob's Burgers movies just came out that looks like that. And it's just like, we still don't know if something else could work. Let's open it up a little bit, And as this, goes back to what I was saying about, I just saw something yesterday. It was a beautiful painting from the 1890s that I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, this is something that once upon a time, if you tried to do it in animation, you'd be in trouble because you couldn't get that painterly look to the whole thing. Now we have the technology that allows you to do it. Why aren't we doing it?
I left because I had problems and I didn't know what else to do.